You could be forgiven if you think that all we do around here is listen to NPR 24/7. Hi, this is Colin Flaherty. I'm the author of Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. On this podcast and in my videos and books and articles, we talk about the greatest lie of this generation, the hoax of black victimization, and how so many people are in denial, deceit, and delusion about it. So that's what we document here. We don't just sit around talk. When we make a statement, we back it up with examples. We don't do a lot on the numbers. The numbers are out there. Anybody can find the numbers anywhere you want. What we do is we illuminate the numbers. We show what the numbers really mean. And the numbers show, the numbers show this. And if you're hearing this for the first time, if you don't know what the numbers are, it's because you don't want to know what the numbers are. It's because you have shut down totally about the reality of black violence and criminality in this country and how it's wildly out of proportion. That's a fact. And so we use these stories as just ways to illuminate the numbers. But anyway, so the other day I was getting into my car on my way to meet one of our viewers / readers / supporters. A lot of people drive up and down the East Coast. I'm pretty close to 95, so when they get in 95 in Wilmington, they go, "Hey, Colin, are you around? Let's go get something to eat." I'm always up for that. So get in my car, turn on the radio, and this is what I heard.
This is an issue that goes to the very foundations of the nation. We still have a deep, unresolved issue on the question of race, and no one party is innocent in that conversation. And it's going to require an entire nation to deal with not only a 400-year history of it, but a history of race that has made the modern world.
So that was a business professor in Virginia describing how we need more dialogue. Translation, no, white people need to listen to black people about how pissed off we are about all this white racism, and you need to change your mind about being a white racist, even though we're not going to give you any real examples of how it's happening, except for some crazy governor who wore a costume to a party 35 years ago. Capiche? That was a business professor, a black business professor in Richmond. Okay, so that was when I got into my car. Okay, so I get out of the car, listening to that, get out of the car, go in, get some breakfast. Got some breakfast. It was a late breakfast. Come out of my car, turn the radio on, and this is what I heard. This is just a tiny part. Multiply this by about 20, and this is what I heard on the radio when I got back in my car after lunch.
And to be clear, not all of these communities, even when they are black communities, are actually supportive of black life. A lot of these, my own community had a lot of businesses that were not black owned. And even before the riots, it was apparent who was respectful of us and who wasn't, even though they were all taking our dollars. So I think all of that feeds into a sense of rage that you feel when something, combust finally.
Now, this is a segment from the Terry Gross show, Fresh Air, where they cover all the gamut of opinions from A to B. And so Terry had a woman on there, a black woman, talking about her childhood in Detroit in 1967. And Terry was talking about the riots in Detroit, except, these people are so transparent, so illuminating for us, their transparency. She's talking about the Detroit riots of 1967, not the only Detroit riots. But Terry actually corrected herself and wondered if she should call them uprisings. They weren't riots, they were uprisings. And so here we have two examples, just as solidly mainstream as you can get. A college professor at a big university, NPR, both of us giving us ready-made excuses for all this black violence. It's wildly out of proportion. That's called permission. So we hear that, well, black people have been victims of all this white racism for 400 years, and man, we got to have a conversation about this. Then we get this author talking to Terry Gross, talking about this black rage, because white people that have stores in the ghetto are disrespecting black people. Boy, the first time I heard that on the radio, I really felt like I needed to. It just made me think of all the shopkeepers around the country, including shopkeepers within 1 mile of where they did that interview at WHYY in Philadelphia, the PBS affiliate up there. Oh, by the way, that show, of course, is like the most popular show on NPR. And within 1 mile of that, all the Asian shopkeepers in the ghetto who have been harassed, tortured, threatened, assaulted, shot, killed every day. Every day. And then a year ago, the Philadelphia City Council passes a new law saying shopkeepers in these small stores, they can't put plexiglass in their stores anymore because that is a sign of disrespect to black people. No, they actually said that, and they had a city council meeting. The council meeting went on for 3 hours. Finally, at the third hour, when they had, one person after another go on and drone on and on and on about how black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism, Asian racism, all the time, everywhere. That explains everything in Philadelphia. And why don't you know that? I mean, why do we even have to say that? Making me come up to your city council and say that is a sign of disrespect. That's a sign of white racism, but I'll tolerate it this time because we're going to outlaw these plexiglass windows. Because everybody knows putting plexiglass in a store to prevent the customers from robbing the storekeeper, that causes crime. Yes, that is what we are experiencing in the city of brotherly love right now. That kind of logic, that kind of thinking. And so now we've got NPR just telling people that all this disrespect people are heaping on black people is the reason that black rage spills out. And when it does, people die. Well, you know what? That's understandable. To understand is to forgive, say the French. Well, I understand. So, if you believe that the people who were going into these stores, clunking people on the head, shooting people, killing people, robbing people, if you believe that they are only in there because of what you just heard, the rage of white disrespect. So are you going to treat those people like perpetrators? Or are you going to treat them like victims? You are going to treat them like victims. You already defined them as victims. Why don't we head down to Charlotte? I'm going to show you what this kind of moral confusion produces.
Tonight, there's a $15,000 reward out for a man who shot and killed another man in an armed robbery in Southeast Charlotte. And we just got a new look at him from surveillance video. So we're going to show this to you now. The FBI is partnering with CMPD to find this man that they call a murderer. They say he shot a 29-year-old at Fixer Electronic Repair on North Sharon Amity Road back on January 14th. And that young man they killed, you see on your screen here, Elchin Khalif, is the one who died.
He cared about his community. He was living the American dream, had came to this country, opened up a business, was making a living for himself and for his other family. And obviously this suspect ended up taking his life.
What you maybe didn't hear on the story, but what you see when you watch this video, this news story down in Charlotte, is that the picture of the guy robbing that white guy, the immigrant guy from Russia. Yeah, he was black. Okay, I have to say that, even though, even though the odds are overwhelmingly that's a black on white, that's a black thing in Charlotte, robbery. That kind of robbery is a black thing in Charlotte. But that's not how the reporting game works, right? You don't get to look at something and go, well, yeah, that happened. The last 100 times that happened, 98 of it was a black thing. No, you got to say every time, you got to figure out who did it. That's the difference between reporting and speculating. I don't have any interest in the speculation part of this racket, which now seems to be which now dominates so many cable news networks. No interest in that whatsoever. We don't speculate, we show. So how many of these do you need to see? I mean, how many of these have we done? How many videos have we done like that? Black guy walking into a store, cell phone store, bing, bam, boom, that guy's dead. Walking into a Chinese grocery, bing, bam, boom, Chinese people are dead. And then where's Terry Gross? Where's that fool who wrote a book about black rage in the ghetto? Where's that foolish Virginia professor explaining to us we need another compensation for 400 years of slavery, Colin? No, can we have a conversation about the 5 minutes it took to rob and kill this guy in Charlotte? Can we have a talk about that? Well, no, Colin, we'll get around to that in 400 more years. But in the meantime, you have to understand white people deserve whatever they're getting because of slavery 400 years ago. And man, okay, guys, there's always so many levels to these stories, right? So you're a parent in Virginia and you hear this guy come on, this college professor. He's supposed to be one of the smart ones, one of the grounded ones, studying business. Do you think that person that business professor has anything to teach you or your children about the world of business in a way that can help you go out and make a buck or two in your life? Doesn't sound like it, because business deals in reality, not in fantasy and delusion. I mean, business people, they have to do two things at once. One, they have to look at the present, look at the past, look at the numbers, see what the opportunities are. But then they take a leap of faith into the future. You might call that delusional. You might call that fantasy, but that's faith. But if that same business person applies that same perspective to the past, where he takes his delusion and fairy tales and fantasies into the past and recreates the past based on a whole bunch of lies and wishful thinking, well, that's a recipe for disaster in business. And that's exactly what that business guy did. I mean, it's no surprise that Terry Gross and this woman were out there having this thing. It's just, if you get a chance to hear that interview, just look it up, Fresh Air, NPR. It's a story about, what's it called? It's a story about a woman whose mother ran the numbers. It's called The World According to Fannie Davis by Bridget M. Davis. And it was so interesting just because Terry Gross was so fawning, so careful. And I mean, everybody at NPR knows there's such a razor's edge. I mean, when you're talking to a black person about black life, if you bring one raised eyebrow into the conversation at the wrong point, I mean, you're going to be, the commercial break, whenever their break are, they're going to come. A couple of hefty security guards are going to come in, grab you by the scruff of the neck, and throw you out the double doors at that studio. Oh yeah, they do not wait around. But Terry Gross and Fannie Davis and that business guy in Virginia, do they have any answer for this business guy in Charlotte who just got shot and killed? Is there any answer for that? I don't hear them giving one. I don't even hear them asking a question. Why don't we head out to Brooklyn, out to Crown Heights, for a story that we've done here many, many times, and we always do these stories on a couple different levels. Isn't it interesting how when black violence is directed at other members of the Democratic Party identity group coalition, people are just confused, and the confusion just makes them paralyzed. It just makes them not do anything about it. I'm talking about black violence directed at Jewish people, black violence directed at Hispanic people, black violence directed at gay people. Those three groups, three core constituencies of the Democratic Party identity coalition, all three are specific targets of black violence all over the country, and I've documented that in both of my books. But one that really kind of gets me the most are the stories that we've done about black violence directed at Jewish people, especially up there in Brooklyn. Now, this whole black on Jewish hostility is something that has been easy to document for a very long time. You look at the lyrics in a lot of rap records. A couple years ago, some of the industry leaders, they went to some of the rappers and they said, listen, we got to cool it on the stuff against Jews. We got to cool it on the stuff against women. So pretty much when you do your raps about guns, drugs, money, bitches, and murder, try not to mention Jews and try not to be specific about which woman you're talking about. Ditto for gay people. Let's leave out the homo stuff, okay? And a lot of musicians did that, but that doesn't mean anything really changed. That doesn't mean Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton, we can forget all the anti-Semitic things that they've said. Town, ring a bell, anybody? Al Sharpton starting a race riot directed at Jews. Anybody ring a bell? Tawana Brawley, anybody? And so we have a magazine a magazine which bills itself as called The Forward. It's a Jewish magazine, and it bills itself as fearless since 1897. Well, the fact is, the people who are members of that, willing members, volunteers in this Democratic coalition, they are not fearless when it comes to pointing out black violence directed at them. No, they're cowardly. They're cowardly even when they think they're being brave, as I'll show you in this article. Why don't we just blow through a little bit of it, and we'll see what passes off for fearless these days. Headline: Crown Heights Jews feel invisible as anti-Semitic attacks persist. And they open the article probably the way I would do it, with a lot of examples. This happened 1 a.m., this guy got punched, this guy da-da-da. Both were Jewish. The twin attacks, they heightened fears of deteriorating relations between Jewish and black residents. There's your premise right away, that there's some kind of like group relations between Jews and blacks that somehow used to be good, but now they're not anymore. This black on Jewish violence has never stopped. How many years ago was it? It was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when this stuff never stops. Every once in a while it kind of peaks, or it happens in a way to escape the bubble, the cone of silence that exists around it. And there's a woman in New York City, Lori Cumbo. She's the councilwoman for this area, black woman. There were a lot of knockout games happening to Jewish people that a lot of Jewish people deny was even the knockout games. It was just random people attacking Jewish people for no reason whatsoever. Colin, don't you know that? Why don't you know that? Anyway, so Lori Cumbo wrote a big, long Facebook post trying to black-explain why these Jewish people are getting attacked by black people all the time. Well, didn't you know it was because some black people feel that Jewish people were not sharing their success? Kind of like that disrespect we heard about in Detroit. It's always something, right? It's like, well, they're not sharing their success. And that's why black people roam the streets of Brooklyn beating the crap out of Jewish people. This is a city councilwoman who said that. 6 months after she said that, she's escorting Hillary Clinton around the same neighborhood, doing a show and tell for all the cameras. And during that time, I was on a radio station up there with a rabbi, and we talked a little bit about this. But the fact is, a lot of Jewish people don't want anything to do with correctly identifying what this is. Like this guy, when you talk about heightened fears of deteriorating relations between Jewish and black residents, that somehow introduces a moral equivalence there, right? It's kind of like, which we see all the time here. I mean, when I hear that, I always think of a little old lady being beat on the street by 10 people. And somebody walking over there and going, oh, hey, can you kids quit fighting with each other? Just get along, okay? And so what this article should have done in the first... So the way you write articles is, sometimes you give an anecdote, and then there's something called the nut graph. Some people call it the lead. If you're trying to make it more of a feature or more of a moody thing, more of an effective article, you don't really put the lead in front. You kind of bury the lead a little bit, second paragraph, third paragraph. It's called a nut graph, where you really kind of sum up what the guy's about to learn in this article. So the nut graph on here would involve black people are attacking Jewish people. And it's a pattern. It's been happening for a long time, and nobody in the Jewish community wants to stand up and call it for what it is. That's the nut graph right there. So then we go down and down, and the guy writes more. He goes, man, nobody's really paying attention to this. It's not covered by the media. But here's they go. They go right into this. They're not covered by the media as much as more overtly white supremacist, anti-Semitic incidents, leaving them feel invisible. Oh, man. Here's this image again of like packs of... Here's this image again that we just got out of Jussie Smollett up in Chicago. Remember when he got beat up? When he said he was beat up, he said, it didn't bother me any, but I just want to make sure it doesn't, I'm drawing attention to this is happening every day all over the country. Yeah, there it is again. It's like white people wearing MAGA hats are roaming the country, stalking gay, black TV stars. Yeah, that happens. Yeah. So then he goes a little bit more into instead of dancing, he's still dancing around it. There have been 15 violent anti-Semitic incidents directed against ultra-Orthodox Jews in Crown Heights since October. We've documented many of them here. And he goes, this is, and many of the incidents in which residents are robbed or chased but not physically harmed have gone unreported. In nearly all of the attacks, the assailants are people of color. Overwhelmingly, it's a black thing. I think I saw one the other day where we did a video on the other day. It might have been an Arab guy. He's just driving down the street, sees an old Jewish dude in Jewish garb, stops his limo, and next thing you know, he's beating him and chasing him around the neighborhood. That was all on video. They go on to quote a director of Chabad Lubavitch. I don't know exactly what kind of group that is, but it's Chabad. It's some kind of Jewish group. The director said, this happened last night in Crown Heights, not in Charlottesville, nor at the hands of white supremacists, said Molly Seligson. Time for a serious and possibly uncomfortable conversation about the face of anti-Semitism in America. Why do Jews have to apologize for being under attack in Brooklyn? Why? Why did the people who write this article, make this magazine, and the guy on the head of that organization, why does he have to dance around the fact that they are under attack? Why? What do these so-called white supremacists have anything to do with anything other than it's part of your fairy tale of ignoring this ridiculous level of black violence directed at Jewish people? Why are you letting that happen? Why? You're committing suicide. Why are you doing that? Okay, here's a professor a professor of American Jewish history at Columbia University. Her name is Rebecca Coburn. The incidents in Crown Heights, says Rebecca, may be difficult for many Jews and the country in general to relate to precisely because they are not about white supremacism. Quote, the rubric for which we talk about anti-Semitism in America is white supremacism, and the notion that certain groups do not belong in this nation, said the professor. Quote, and what's happening in Crown Heights is much more related to the complexities of racial tensions in New York City and the complexity of shared space, and clearly has nothing to do with white supremacism. Unquote. You know, that's one of my red flags when I hear the word complexity. When groups of black people are raging through Brooklyn, targeting and attacking Jewish people, you can be sure that reporters and talking heads and professors are going to stand up and start talking about complexity. Because good old Colin is sitting here going, hey, wait a minute, that's black on Jewish violence. And no, they didn't leave any damn notes. No, they didn't put it up they weren't holding posters saying, we hate Jews. But the pattern is the proof. Oh, you guys thought I wasn't paying attention when Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island, yes, there is a senator by the name of Whitehouse, he was a prosecutor. He was sitting there talking about Kavanaugh in the Supreme Court, and he knew that, you know, the Supreme Court was biased against the liberal causes because there was a pattern of those kind of decisions. And he said, when you're in court of law, pattern is regarded as proof. He says they do it all the time. Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. So if having a professor from Columbia University to be in denial, deceit, and delusion about this isn't enough, then they went to Evan Bernstein, the regional director for the Anti-Defamation League in New York and New Jersey. He called the Crown Heights attacks an anomaly. And he brought up the attack in Pittsburgh where some whack job with a high-powered weapon went into a synagogue and killed 11 Jewish people. But Bernstein said many non-Orthodox Jews and Jews living outside New York don't understand the specific risks that Orthodox Jews run by being visibly Jewish and may focus more attention on the kind of ideological and categorical anti-Semitism espoused by the far right. Yeah, espoused by 10 guys living in Idaho. That's about it. Neighborhood organizations have made commitments to stopping the attacks, putting on joint press conferences between nonprofits that serve the black and Jewish populations. We did a video on that. There's one guy, this is after a bunch of attacks. This is like a month ago. They're holding a press conference. There's like 10 people there, right? There's a Jewish guy on the microphone telling everybody how Jewish people and black people, how they get along so well in the Bronx and that area, and everybody's loving each other, and we just got to get rid of this, violence that apparently, it just happens at random. And then he points to the guy next to him, whatever the hell his name was, and he goes, yeah, just he and I standing here are proof positive. What I'm saying is true. But on the video, it's really weird. You see the Jewish guy, the white guy, trying to embrace the black guy. He's like, he's in his teens. The black guy, the entire speech, has his phone out and he's texting and he's looking away from the Jewish guy and he just absolutely refuses to respond to anything the Jewish guy is saying about them being big buddies. I mean, this was a perfect metaphor for the whole scene down there. You got all these liberals in New York City going, hey, come on, people. We have to resolve the divisions between our communities. There is no division. Black people are targeting Jewish people for violence. Why don't you figure that out? There is no moral or There is no moral equivalence here. Anybody who says there is, anybody who thinks there is, anybody who tries to pretend there is, you are a danger. On the one, because then they bring out the random community members. On the one hand, we have to be responsible and not jump to conclusions before we have all the information and mislabel and attack. Good Lord, you fool! You're under attack. Every day, every night. Everybody who lives there, every Jewish person who lives in that neighborhood knows they're under the attack and the threat of attack every single minute. And it's not coming from random packs of people wearing MAGA hats, you fool. But every time one of these attacks happen, the only thing you have to say is, well, let's have a very legalistic discussion so we can distance ourselves from the horror of what just happened so we don't have to break the little bubble around our own lives and confront the ridiculous level of violence that black people are visiting upon Jewish people in this neighborhood. I don't understand how people like that stay alive. They're so dumb. I mean, how do you stay alive? You're walking through Williamsburg, you're walking through other parts of New York that are dangerous, especially for Jewish people. I mean, if you go there, if you're not smart enough to figure out what this is, how are you smart enough to avoid those attacks? The answer is this. Maybe you are smart enough. Maybe on some level, no maybe here, on some level you do know what the real story is, but you just don't have the stones to come out and tell us. You would rather for more people to get hurt, you would rather for Jewish people to basically commit suicide than for you to come out and say, yeah, black people are not really into Jewish people around here. That's why they're always attacking us. And then at the end, they make their perfunctory tough guy statement that we see on my videos a lot. Somebody always comes in and goes, hey, Colin, those fellas better not bring that into my neighborhood because we know how to deal with them here. So the article ends up by saying, our kids are going to catch the attackers and they're going to take the law into their own hands and we are going to have a crisis, said one of the activists. And that is not how we want this to end. Where in the good book of anybody's religion, are you required to give aid and comfort to the people who come into your home, into your neighborhood, and threaten and kill your family members? Where is that required? When I lived in San Diego, I used to hang out with a lot of Jewish guys. They'd call me, hey, Colin, come on down. We're having a cup of coffee at the Starbucks. We'd go down, be me and 5 guys. They got a kick out of having a non-Jewish guy in the group, and I got a kick out of listening to them. They're all very smart, all Democrats, all very successful. But I used to always kid them, and I thought I knew more about the Torah and more about Jewish life than they did. If I saw one of them eating a shrimp cocktail or eating a cheeseburger, I'd go, hey, that's not kosher. They would laugh. My friend Craig, who's no longer with us, a good friend of mine, he was a member of, I guess you would call it a liberal temple. And he'd get a newsletter every month. He used to show me the newsletter because we had these discussions about, Jewish life and why they're so liberal and why don't Jewish people in America why do Christians in America support the state of Israel more than Jewish people do? Anyway, so he got a kick out of hearing me talk about this, and he'd always give me the newsletter he got because his son was going to get bar mitzvahed, so they were active in the temple, and so he showed me the newsletter, and one of the never forget this newsletter, where the rabbi is talking about their faith and the things they have to kind of abide by and not abide by. And he said, listen, don't worry about the kosher stuff. That's kind of old-fashioned. Today we can keep kosher by, saving the rainforest, or stopping global warming, or a whole list of other things that could have been ripped from the platform of the Democratic Party convention. And this rabbi called it eco-Judaism. And so I don't know why, people use their faith as a way to avoid this kind of reality, and they, use their faith to kind of embrace this political reality that is at odds with, what's happening to you. I went to a wedding in L.A., a Jewish wedding in L.A., right on the beach. It was one of these hotels you always see on television. I think it was called Shutters. So the wedding was outside, and it was underneath, I don't know what you call it, some kind of kiosk or whatever you would call it. And it was a nice ceremony, short, and after the vows were exchanged, they had a glass under like a tablecloth, and people stomped on the glass. So we hung around outside for like a half hour until we all went downstairs for the reception dinner. And so anyway, while we're outside, there's waiters walking around with these hors d'oeuvres. So I walked over, and the hors d'oeuvre, it's one tray of hors d'oeuvres is nothing but shrimp cocktail. So I picked one up, and I said, hey, in a crowd of Jewish people, I picked one up. I didn't know any of them. They didn't know me. I said, hey, my name is Colin Flaherty. Even I know this isn't kosher. Everybody started laughing. They started patting me on the back going, don't worry, man, just relax, have fun. So they took it in the spirit with which I gave it. So I have an enormous amount of respect for all the stuff that is contained in, in Jewish tradition and Jewish law and Jewish practices. All I'm saying is I don't understand why this tolerance for black violence against Jewish people has become part of that tradition. I don't see where that is. It's nowhere. You invented it. And for this writer to do a story about this under the banner of being fearless, when this article is nothing but one long deflection about what is really happening there, that's fearless? That's the opposite of fearless. That's the opposite of having a creed, something you believe in, something that guides your actions. No, that is running away from your creed. That is denying your traditions. When did self-defense become anathema in any religious tradition? You're under attack. I've documented dozens and dozens and dozens of them on video. When are you going to do something except fantasize that, someday everybody's going to organize, we're going to get these soldiers come in from Israel and chase these miscreants down, and that's going to be a crisis. No, the crisis is already happening. The crisis is this incredible level of black dysfunction in your neighborhood that your elected leaders are trying to turn into a virtue. Oh yes, we beat up black people all the time, but that's only because the Jewish people don't share their success. Yeah, I'm looking forward to telling Hillary about that next time she comes to town. Okay, let's move on over to Memphis. Before we go there, I promised myself during my podcast I was going to remind you that there are ways to support this channel. And the way this channel and my video podcasts and my Twitter and Facebook, the way they work is my viewers support them. They make them happen. These things are so important. There's such a wide audience. So many people watch them. The way people experience these podcasts is the same way people experience the videos and books. When people watch my videos, they don't necessarily watch everyone every single day for years. What people do is they come in for a couple weeks, a couple months at a time. and they look at him and they go, yeah, okay, Colin, you can convince me. I've read your book. I've seen these videos. You've convinced me there's something really, really bad happening in this country. They know that. Then maybe they don't watch it that much for a while. But when they go away, what they do is they're constantly telling their friends. It's like, hey, somebody will see something happens. They'll go, hey, did you ever see Colin's videos? Did you read his books? That's one fantastic way to support this channel. Just spreading the word. If you're on Twitter, that means signing up for my Twitter account, retweeting my stuff, dropping a comment in there. Ditto for Facebook. Share, like, subscribe. Ditto, go over to minds.com, Colin Flaherty, find me over there. Post videos there all the time. Share, like, subscribe. Let your friends know what's in there. You don't have to tell them. If the topic comes up, say, hey, do you ever see those videos by that Colin Flaherty guy? You ought to check them out. One of the things that's really taken off in the last year is I've always encouraged other people to take my videos and spread them around. Even when, my videos were monetized on YouTube, if I gave my video away to somebody, that basically meant good old Colin was not getting a few pennies in his cup every time that video played. I didn't care. I just thought we really wanted to get this message out there because there's so many obstacles to people telling the truth about this ridiculous level of racial violence in this country. I thought we really need to just let these things flow wherever they want to go. And that's what we did. But a year or so ago, when I got kicked off of YouTube for the last time, I decided, I'm just going to go on Minds because I don't want to keep having to rebuild my audience every 6 months. I just want to get my audience and keep them, keep building that. But I kept telling people, hey, share these videos. And there's a couple of people over at YouTube. I think one is called Undeniable Truth. And what's the other one called? Dolomite. I don't even know what a dolomite is. So if it's like something really bad, I'm sorry. Those are two guys. But if you just put Colin Flaherty in the search box on YouTube, you'll see people who are posting my videos every day, almost as soon as I post them. That is fantastic. And the crazy thing is, I think my YouTube videos now are getting as much action as my old videos did back in the old days, and they get as much action as the stuff happening on Minds and Facebook and Twitter do, almost combined. So that's a great way to support these efforts as well. Take the videos and slap them up on your YouTube channel or slap them up on your Facebook page or your Twitter. And but not everybody is in a position to do that. If you work in a cubicle, if you're a cop, a fireman, a paramedic, I don't want you to lose your job because you are putting all this stuff on your Facebook page. That's the reality of the world we live in. No, I want you to keep your job and use your job to help support people who can do what you can't do. That's what we do here. So if you feel like you want to do that, slap a few coins in the cup over at paypal.me/Flaherty457. Go to colinflaherty.com. You can see my PayPal stuff there. You could even set up a monthly donation, make it real easy. Some people, my address is on my minds.com/Colin Flaherty page. You can go there, see my address, slap something in the mail to me, whatever you want to do. But really, I'm always surprised at the people who do this. I'm amazed. People really think, how people really respond to this and how they really are touched that there's something really strange going on in this country and they want to be a part of making sure people know about it. So I'm very grateful for all the support we get here on all kinds of different levels. And I'm really happy when I do get a chance to meet a lot of you guys. So let's do more of that. And thanks. Now let's get back to the latest story this one's out of Memphis. I remember, and I think this was in White Girl Bleed a Lot. I still remember the first time I read a story, and it was in Detroit. It was about high school football games. And in Detroit, by the time I started reading and writing about this stuff, there were no night football games in Detroit. just because the black schools, it was just too much violence, too many shootings, too many robberies, too many assaults on the visiting teams, just too much. So they took them down from a Friday night and they put them on, a lot of them on a Saturday morning, something, whatever. And I think one of the times they put a game like on a Friday afternoon or something, whatever it was. I don't think it was at night, but this is in White Girl Bleed a Lot. That was the headline of the story in the sports page. The sports writer was jubilant that they had a high school sporting event in Detroit, a football game, where there was no riot. And he just kept writing on and on and on. Man, this is fantastic. We had a bunch of black people in the same place and there was no riot. Isn't that fantastic? I was thinking about that when I saw this story out of Houston this morning.
This fight between Overton and Sheffield started after a ref called a jump ball. According to the TSHA, the teams started fighting and at least 5 people ran from the stands to join in. This fight between Westwood and Fairleigh was after the game. This is the second one reported. The report says the buzzer sounded and the teams were getting ready to shake hands. It goes on to say players from opposing teams started to square up to fight. The ref blew the whistle and fans ran from the bleachers to throw hands. Then the final report says a fight between Melrose and Wooddale started after there was some taunting on the court after a foul was called. Fans from both teams stormed the Harwood.
Wow, how'd you like that truth bomb in there at the end where the anchor, she goes, oh yeah, that's been happening for a long time. What? Is there any other pattern you can detect down there in Memphis, Tennessee? One of the truly dark and dangerous and dirty chocolate cities in America. Any other pattern you can detect? You know, the white reporters have trouble picking up these patterns, but the black people who live and run Memphis, they don't have any trouble with it. The last mayor of Memphis, the guy who was taking down all the statues, he was on NPR once. He was like a regular guest there. He was like their voice of the black people. And they got him on there and they were saying, hey, what's up with Black Lives Matter? And he went into this like 5-minute discussion of how, you know, white racism and white history and white this and white that. Very calm and soft voice, kind of like that Bob Ross, the painter guy. And at the end of that 5-minute monologue, you know, we were all supposed to have a full understanding of why white people in Memphis are targets and why black violence is such a thing in Memphis. You know, if you want to be convinced by that, go ahead. I mean, that's on you. But I'm going to sit here on these podcasts and in my videos going, no, I don't think that's normal. I don't think that's normal. And anybody who does think it's normal, well, you are a danger to yourself and to others. So we see the stories of these riots in Memphis that occur with predictable regularity. And we see the reporters doing everything they can just to pretend they're not black people involved. No, they're not, Colin. It's just, well, I didn't really notice who that was at those games, Colin. Okay. But the one story that kind of keeps, the stories that keep kind of coming back to me are the stories we've done over the last month. We did a podcast on this about black women being raped. And how Huffington Post said, the women protect the rapists. That's what Melissa Harris Perry said at MSNBC. That's what lots of other stories said. The women don't want their rapists to be arrested for a lot of reasons. I mean, there was a couple of stories about a woman down at Spelman College down in Atlanta, black college in Atlanta. She said she was raped by a guy she knew. She went to the authorities. All of a sudden, they're grilling her. They're asking her if her skirt was too short, if she let him on. And then they're explaining to her that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. And why do you want to be part of this white racism of putting another fella in jail? Why? And that comes from the minister, comes from the community organizer, comes from a school official. It might come from her friends. And in the end, according to Huffington Post, black women are trained to protect the race at all costs. That's why they don't testify. It's why they don't press charges. And so if you're not going to tell the cops what happened when you were raped, what are you going to do if your neighbor was raped? If your sister was raped? If your mom, your daughter is raped? Are you going to report that? What if your neighbor is a racist, a rapist? Are you going to report that? No. I mean, if you are going to be in denial, deceit, and delusion and ignore, deny, condone, excuse, encourage, and even lie about this level of racial violence, including rape, directed at you, I mean, what's your attitude going to be about all the rest of this black violence out there? Oh, hell, that's going to be easy to dismiss. If you can dismiss a very personal case of rape against you or somebody you know, I mean, the rest is easy. Oh, 3 riots at a basketball game? Oh, hell, Colin, that's nothing. That's just some kids blowing off some steam. Dozens and dozens of examples of black people attacking Jews in Crown Heights? Oh, hell, Colin, that's just Jewish people not sharing their success. Small business owners by the hundreds every year are attacked, robbed, beaten, and murdered. Oh, hell, Colin, that's just black people blowing off some steam because we're enraged at the lack of respect of white racism. And by the way, Colin, Asian people are white people. You didn't know that, did you, Colin? Oh, and by the way, when we hear these stories about people not reporting, not being witnesses, what does that do to your precious numbers? Even the guy in that story from Brooklyn, he just was touch and go. He said a lot of people are not reporting the violence. The federal government does a study every year. I forget what it's called. I wrote about it in one of my books, where they talk about like half the people who are victims of violent crime don't report it. And the main reason for not reporting the crime is because you don't think anything will happen to the person if they catch them. You think they're not going to get caught. If they do get caught, they won't get convicted. If they do get convicted, they won't go to jail. And you just don't want to waste your time. You want to put this crazy business behind you. So all the stuff we see happening, whether it's in Memphis or Brooklyn or Charlotte, just in this podcast, this is all tip of the iceberg stuff. This is all stuff that illuminates this ridiculous level of black violence in this country so wildly out of proportion. It illuminates how hard, how exhausting the efforts are these reporters put in to be in denial, deceit, and delusion about it. That's what we do here on these podcasts. Thanks for listening and spreading this around, even if it does make the black kids angry.